New Buddha Dhamma Talks. Geoff Hunt presents a talk on some aspect of the Buddha's teaching.
I thought it'd be good to talk about equanimity today. Equanimity, which is not a word we use every day, but actually, perhaps it is a word we should use every day or keep in mind. It's a very useful word when we understand what it means. Actually, it's self-explanatory because equa is obviously equal. Animity is anima, meaning spirit or mind, heart. So it's what it's telling us is the importance of maintaining even-mindedness, a balanced mind, and mind of equality. So it's a state of mind, and you could also say it's an attitude to life. Some people are equanimous, which is again not a word we use very often, but even-minded. Let's go with even-minded. That's a nice, probably closest decent translation. Even-mindedness. So the opposite would be uneven-mindedness. Also, more broadly, an attitude to life. We meet people who are quite balanced, let's say, don't react strongly to things. Then we meet other people, including ourselves, when we look at the mirror, who are very reactive. So equanimity, yes, state of mind, attitude to life, it's even-mindedness. You could also say it's calm, it's balance, it's poise, not being so judgmental, not thinking of terms in terms of I like this and I don't like that, which drives so much of our consumer society. And being able to sustain that when things are difficult, as they're said to be at the moment. Of course, difficulty is relative. What some human beings have been living through on this planet have been infinitely worse than what we are going through at the moment. So it's all rather relative. But when things are annoying or upsetting to you, that's the time when we need to ring a little bell in the head, say, equanimity, yes. Let's go back to the middle. Let's not lose our evenness of mind. So the opposite would be, as I've said, a reactive mind. And again, we see this in other people quite easily, but we need to see it in ourselves, where we react or we overreact to what is going on. Of course, some of us are very reactive, which doesn't make for a happy mind at all. Others are relatively calm, whatever seems to be happening. But this is something we can cultivate, something we can develop, something through mindfulness that we can become aware of. We can be thrown off balance into imbalance, and from imbalance we become irritated, we can become angry, we can even become violent. There's a natural tendency of the mind to be polarizing, which is another useful word here. Polarizing meaning splitting everything into one pole or the other pole. We are reluctant to accept that maybe, depending on how you look at it, a lot of things are they're just neutral. Or I could allow them to be neutral. But I've got this little switch that's always on saying, does it fit in the good box or does it fit in the bad box? Right? If only we could just lighten up a bit on that and let go of the polarizing mind. Now, by polarizing, we've got the North Pole, we've got the South Pole. We can think of your mind in that way as well, if you like. You know, it tends to go, or it somehow feels that it ought to go to one extreme to another, that it ought to make a judgment. No, it doesn't have to make a judgment. It can just sit where it is and accept. Except in extreme situations are a bit more difficult, but just accept how things are. We don't have to be so excited. We don't have to be so judgmental. We don't have to be so rejecting. We don't have to go over the top with the things we enjoy or give us pleasure. We tend to go over the top, which it's connected with many of, for example, the environmental problems we have now. Okay, let's take a simple example, shall we? Well, we've currently got a pandemic. As I always say, a lot of people are living in pandemic and have been doing so for centuries. It's just part of their way of life. Malaria is a kind of a pandemic, for example. But anyway, let's think about, how that is creating anxiety and how we can maintain equanimity. Well, one simple way to do this is to switch off the damn television. No way it doesn't occur to people. There are those people I meet who watch the news about coronavirus, I don't know, must be 6 or 7 hours a day. And they don't feel happy about it. They're quite agitated. Now let's go to the other polar, the polar opposite. The polar opposite where say, I'm not going to listen to anything about coronavirus, which a president of a big country happens to be doing at the moment. I'm just burying my head in the sand, and it doesn't. So I'm not going to listen to any news about coronavirus. Now, somewhere in the middle, there is equanimity. I suggest, for example, that this is what I try to do most of the time, is listen to the news round about 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, pick up the news on coronavirus or anything else, and then switch off the TV. There's so many other things I can be doing with my life rather than soaking up the exaggerated views of the media. There is a pandemic. It is dangerous, right? I need to know about it, but I don't need to make myself thoroughly miserable by watching or agitated by watching the news about it all the time. On the other hand, now this is the other polar opposite, is I do need to know what's going on. So somewhere in the middle there is, let's pick it up at 6 o'clock, forget about it until tomorrow at 6 o'clock. Now, there's a simple example of what I mean by equanimity. With equanimity, you can listen to it, you can size it up, you can think about what needs to be done, and then just make the changes that need to be made and get on with life. I feel quite sad when I see, certain members of my family that, what's happening with the coronavirus? Is it worse? And they got, they know everything about coronavirus. They don't even know what's in their back garden, but they know what's going on with the coronavirus. Obsessiveness. So obsessiveness is a throwing off balance. It's an extreme case of not equanimity. Equanimity is a very special concept in Buddhism. In Pali, the word is upekkha, and you probably came across it the other day when we were talking about the 4 Brahma Viharas, or the four immeasurables. There was loving kindness, there was compassion, there was joy, and there was equanimity. But we could easily skip over that word equanimity and not realize that it's actually a principle that cuts across the whole of the Buddha's teaching. There's no part of it that doesn't draw in or assume equanimity, balance of mind. So it's very important. Let's see how it is important by putting it in the context of the Dharma, that is the teaching of the Buddha. So it's a very general principle which cuts across the whole of the teaching. Now, the whole of the teaching, which Lynn recited earlier on, the Noble Eightfold Path, we can also conveniently divide into three parts. That is the morality or ethics part. Then there's the meditational part, such as mindfulness. And then there is the wisdom and compassion part, such as right concentration. Each one of those can and should be seen in the light of equanimity. So take ethics, right? Right speech, right action, right livelihood. We could call that ethics, call it morality. In Pali, it's sila. Okay, let's take a simple example. And I've given this example before, what I call the all and some polarization. If you listen very carefully to yourself and to other people, you'll notice how often people make sweeping statements. So my favorite example is, all women are bad drivers. You've really got to think about half a second to think there's something very wrong with that. But a lot of people still do it. It was more, it was more common in the 1960s, 70s, perhaps. I'm just giving it as an example. Now, the problem there is polarization. All women are bad drivers. it's discriminatory, it's prejudice, and it is plain stupidity. If on the other hand we say if we say some women are bad drivers, that would be true. And if we say some men are bad drivers, that would be true too. It's the all, or the assumption of an all, or every, or always, that often traps us into this polarization. Be very careful how you use all and some and many and sometimes. There's a difference between having an open mind and having a closed one. You've already decided that all women are bad drivers, so I just see it everywhere. Right? That's just a nasty playfulness of my mind, really. Okay, so we can talk about that when we come to the discussion section. We could apply the same to action. We could apply the same to our livelihood. Take another very simple example. Eating. We've talked about mindfulness of eating. Now, it could be that I eat too much, in a sense that it's perhaps not good for me, making me unwell, or making me vulnerable to being unwell. Or I could speak in terms of, not eating enough, or eating not enough of the right thing. So recently, there's been talk of, the importance of vitamin D. So then I rush over to the supermarket and buy myself some vitamin D, as though, it's not just the vitamin D, it's the whole approach to life and to food. It's not a question of eating too much or eating too little. It's a matter of having the right balanced attitude towards food. Because we can become quite neurotic in one direction or another. I know someone who's a friend of my wife who died actually from not eating enough. She'd gone into what is classified as an eating disturbance. That's an extreme case. We also know, according to statistics, many of us are eating too much, or more often eating the wrong thing. Now, again, you see, what you see there is things getting out of balance. If you can bring more balance into your life and just think in this terms of equanimity, you will find you are a calmer person. You're a happier person. But instead, we tend to go to this extreme, then whoops, we've gone too far, go back to that extreme, or become obsessed about things, wanting things to stay the same, enjoy my enjoyments every day. It's life just isn't like that. What helps us a lot is equanimity, just learning to deal with what is happening around us in an accepting, but not a blind way. If we take mindfulness, all right, so this is the meditation part of the teaching. Now, equanimity is so important here. We attach to things or we reject things, and we usually do so reactively. We put borders or walls or limits to things, and then we take them too seriously, as though they were put there by nature rather than by the human mind. The concept of karma. Now, again, we could talk a lot about karma, and in my teaching, the way I teach this is that karma is a useful concept as long as we don't turn it into a cosmology. It's not about the nature of the universe. It's about you. And that if you behave in certain ways, it will hurt you. It'll come back and hit you immediately. And if you do so in generous, kind, loving ways, then immediately it will buoy you up. Your life will be a little calmer and happier. So karma is immediate. Again, what's the difference between that and the principle of equanimity? Things will happen. How are you going to respond? You could overreact, and then you hurt yourself. You may not even hurt anybody else. Even when you want to hurt somebody because you're angry with them, you find that you're hurting yourself more than you're hurting them. Maybe they just laugh at you. So I'm trying to give you the breadth of this concept of equanimity. It's really important. I want to get this across to you. Finally, the other big part of the teaching is wisdom and compassion, right concentration, right intention. Now, there's a lot can be said there, but if you think that equanimity doesn't apply there, you're wrong. It certainly does, big time. In fact, the Buddha probably talks of equanimity in relation to concentration meditation or samadhi more than anything else. Because the point is, you see, what are we trying to do with our concentration? We're trying to clear the mind, get all the junk out of it, stop it reacting, allow it to become more and more clear, clearer and clearer, which means letting go more and more of the self until, hey presto, there is no self. That would be nirvana. Perfect, blissful peace. Now equanimity is not an issue anymore. There is nothing to be equanimous or equanimous about. But you see, even in the higher levels of concentration, something keeps popping up. This is me. I am the one doing the meditating. I am the one that's benefiting from the peace. I want more of that. I. But that's the very thing that's getting in the way. But if I recall equanimity, I will think, no, balance, keep the balance. Don't start bringing I, me, mine into it again. So equanimity has a very big role to play in meditation. Now, another way of putting it, it's easy to remember, and that is that equanimity is a guide reminding you to beware of extremes. Now, we're living in an era of extremes. We can see the extremes coming to the foreground. You know, if only equanimity were common knowledge. Well, we switch on that damn television, and there are people fighting in the streets with each other, with the police, with the military, whatever, all over the world. What's going on? It's a big, big failure of equanimity. People going to extremes. I hold this extreme position, you hold the opposite. So we don't like each other. In fact, we dislike each other so much we want to hurt each other. What a good idea. Which idiot came up with that? Well, it was us, the human race, unfortunately. But we can do better. We can do better. So when you feel being pulled in one direction or another, be aware, that's the mindfulness, that you are being pulled. Pulled towards what is attractive, being and moving away from or rejecting what is apparently unattractive. Now, a good framework in the Buddhist teaching for applying equanimity is the so-called 8 worldly attentions: pleasure, praise, fame, and gain, and avoidance of their opposites. That is when I need to restore some balance. So take pleasure. We go over the top with pleasure all the time. In fact, the Western world is built on it. It's built on it. That's what the consumer society is all about, and all the wreckage it has created around us. It is being grossly out of kilter. Pleasure, pleasure, pleasure. Why shouldn't I have pleasure all the time? Why not? Well, because life isn't like that. You know, it comes and goes like everything else. Praise. We want to be recognized by others. That's our pride. That's our self-speaking. We want to avoid pain of any sort, mental pain, physical pain. We feel that we have, that pain is an intruder of some sort. Pain is not an intruder. Pain will pop up in life. There it is, and it's a teacher for us all about, how to develop equanimity, actually. Because just chasing pleasure and rejecting pain is never going to allow you to follow equanimity. It's just one extreme or the other. Go to this pole, go to that pole. Back and forth, in your own mind and in your relationships with others and in society at large. We can do better than that. I want to finish with a quotation from Pema Chodron. Some of you will have read her books. She is a Tibetan Buddhist nun, and I like her teachings very much. Pema Chodron said, to cultivate equanimity, we practice catching ourselves when we feel attracted, feel attraction or aversion, before it hardens into grasping or negativity. Let's just read it again. To cultivate equanimity, that is that even-mindedness, we practice catching ourselves. We feel an attraction coming on to something. Could be you've just seen an advertisement about beaches in Mallorca or something, or aversion, like I don't want that, keep that away from me. That's, that's nasty. That doesn't give me any pleasure. But to catch that as well in your mind before it hardens into grasping, clinging so hard that our knuckles become white, but we don't notice. Our knuckles become lighter in color because we are hanging on so tightly to what we feel is so essential in life. Pleasure, 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 more pleasure. Pleasure, praise, fame, gain, success, pride. What a merry-go-round. So when we feel that attraction or aversion coming on, we notice it. That's the mindfulness part. We are aware of it happening in us. It's not happening in the world. It is happening in your mind. And your mind constructs and reconstructs the world every day for you. Sometimes in patterns which you've just picked up, had drilled into you probably since you were children. We can create a better reality for ourselves by just becoming aware of what we are as human beings. So let us let go of the polarizing mind. And always remember that equanimity, or the evenness of mind, runs through everything. Thank you very much.
New Buddha Way lets go of East and West and starts afresh in the life we have now. For more information, visit www.newbuddhaway.org.